You don't have to pretend to be the good guy anymore. The words kept playing in my head, an infinite, looping track. Each syllable seemed to hit the cold tile floor, echoing once, then shattering into 1,000 fragments. I stood there, leaning heavily against the kitchen counter, the soft, tired yellow light from the open fridge casting deep shadows on my face. Empty, that's what I felt. Outside, late night, Philadelphia was weeping. The rain tapped against the window panes, a quiet, insistent drumbeat that blended with the wind snaking through the oak trees in the yard. The air inside the house was dense with that cold, wet feeling, as if the entire home was sinking into a heavy, suffocating silence. The party had ended less than 2 hours ago, but the aftermath felt chaotic. On the island counter, a few plastic plates sat scattered next to half-empty wine glasses and a slice of abandoned cake. My eyes landed on Sophie's graduation, invite Morgan's daughter, the silver foil of the card glinting under the light. Right beneath the printed, elegant script, "Congratulations, class of 2025, was a small handwritten note from Sophie. Thanks. Eric, not Dad, just Eric. A single, clipped word, sharp enough to tighten my chest until I couldn't breathe. I took a deep, shuddering breath and pulled out a chair, sinking into it. The feeling wasn't anger, not exactly. It was a dull, constant ache, like realizing you'd somehow lost something that had felt profoundly real, profoundly close, without ever knowing how it slipped away. I looked around the room, the remaining white and blue balloons bobbing sadly near the ceiling, the slivers of silver ribbon scattered across the hardwood floor, and the large backdrop still standing defiantly in the corner. Sophie's graduation party, we're so proud of you. I had spent over a month making this happen, booking the venue, coordinating the caterers, arguing over the DJ, even tracking down Sophie's favorite cake, a strawberry cream with white buttercream swirls, featuring a framed photo of her in her cap and gown right in the middle. I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted her to feel my love, my pride, the kind of quiet, steady pride of a man who didn't share her DNA, but who had been there, every single day. For the last 6 years, when the party began, I remembered every detail. Sophie walking in to a burst of applause, her face glowing, her eyes bright, her smile still as guileless as it was when she was 12. I'd almost cried then, but moments later, I saw him, Mark, Sophie's biological father, standing by the entrance, and the light inside me went out. Mark arrived late, in a perfectly tailored black suit, flashing that confident smile and a proud glint in his eyes. Sophie ran to him, tears welling up, hugging him fiercely. I just stood a few feet away, clutching my wine glass, watching the reunion like a stranger who'd stumbled into the wrong house. Megan, my wife, was smiling too, saying something soft and low to Mark, but she never once glanced in my direction. I had a speech ready, just a few lines, something warm to toast the kid. But when the music swelled and people started clinking glasses, I watched Sophie take her father's arm, walk onto the small stage, and offer her thanks. She thanked her mother, she thanked her father, she thanked her friends, her teachers, and then she paused. Her eyes scanned the room, flicked past me for a split second, and she continued. Not a single word for me. The room erupted in applause. I stood amidst the roar of laughter and cheers, hearing nothing but a ringing, deafening void in my head. After the guests finally cleared out, it was just me, Megan, and a couple of cleaning staff. I quietly gathered the glasses, stacked the chairs, and wiped down the sticky tables. Megan was outside on the porch, leaning against the railing, talking on her phone. The wind picked up, whipping strands of her hair around her face. When she came back in, the softness in her eyes was gone. I asked quietly, "Did you think the party went okay?" She was silent for a long moment, the kind of silence that's louder than shouting. Then she said, "It was fine, but maybe you don't have to keep trying so hard to be the good guy anymore." Her voice wasn't angry. It was just level, cold, the kind of detached calm that cuts deeper than any accusation. I just stood there, paralyzed. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't understand how one simple sentence could make the foundation beneath me crumble so completely. Megan walked straight past me and into the bedroom. Her steps were light, but the click of the door closing echoed so loudly in that empty space that I can still hear it now. I sat back down in the dark, staring at the string lights still blinking faintly in the yard, and I finally understood. Maybe things had changed a long time ago, and I was just the last person to catch up. I don't know how long I stayed there. I only moved when the rain turned into a heavy downpour. Every drop hitting the eaves seemed to merge with the quiet, hollow ache in my chest. And there, in the middle of a rainy Philadelphia night, I realized, tonight wasn't just Sophie's graduation party. It was the final chapter for my part in this family. My story with Megan, the wife in part 1, didn't begin with fireworks. It began in the sterile, high-energy bustle of a windy March afternoon in New York City. I was wrapping up a corporate project in Manhattan. She was giving a presentation on open-plan design for spaces, catering to autistic children. I remember her standing there confident, yet graceful, her hands subtly sketching curves in the air as she described the path of natural light across a floor plan. She wasn't just talking about architecture. She was talking about feeling, and I, a man lost in a crowd of suits, was drawn to her voice like a traveler who'd finally found something familiar in a foreign land. After the seminar, we ended up at a coffee shop nearby, talking for 2 straight hours. Megan told me she'd walked away from a huge, high-profile firm because her boss treated people like commodities. "I'd rather be broke and free than live in a gilded cage," she said, and there was a fierce, unyielding light in her eyes. I smiled, and right then, in that moment, I knew I would never forget her. We started dating. It wasn't the loud, explosive kind of love you read about. It was warm, slow, and built on tiny, crucial details. The little sticky notes she'd leave on my fridge, a hastily drawn heart, and the words, "Good luck today." The goodnight texts every single evening, even when she knew I was working late. One time, I joked, "Aren't you ever afraid we'll run out of things to talk about?" She just laughed, tilting her head. "As long as you're willing to stay quiet, Eric, I'll always have something to say." It all felt so perfectly right. We decorated our small apartment in Brooklyn together. I handled the painting, she chose the curtains, and we'd laugh while wiping paint streaks off each other's faces. On quiet autumn mornings, the sun streaming through the window, she'd put on some Billie Holiday and lean her head on my shoulder. I remember that feeling, simple, peaceful, like a silent promise that we're going to be okay, that nothing, apparently, is permanent. I started noticing the disconnect. She worked harder, but she talked less. Some nights, she'd sit in front of her laptop until midnight, staring at the screen, but never typing a single word. When I asked, she'd only say, "I'm just thinking," and I knew, instinctively, she was thinking about something that didn't involve me. One evening, while clearing the dinner dishes, her phone lit up, a message notification from a contact named M. "We still on for tonight?" I didn't get a chance to read further. She came into the room, quick and sudden, as if she could feel my eyes on her screen. She offered a strained, too bright smile. "Clyde, don't worry about it." The words were weightless, but my chest felt instantly tight, a physical knot forming beneath my ribs. From that day on, the atmosphere between us shifted. Dinners became silent affairs. She left earlier and came home later. When I tried to talk, she'd answer with a flat, absent "May." I tried to pretend everything was normal, but in my head, 1,000 theories were crashing into each other. I didn't want to believe Megan was capable of betrayal. Not her, the woman who once said, "I hate lies most of all." Then, one quiet Saturday morning, as I was pouring coffee, she simply said, "Eric, I think we need a break, just so I can figure myself out." Her voice was soft, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. Everything in the apartment, from the chipped mug she always used, to the photo of us laughing in Central Park, suddenly felt distant, unfamiliar. I just nodded. I didn't know what else to do. Maybe loving someone means knowing when to be silent, but as she closed the door behind her, leaving me with the faint whistle of the wind coming through the window frame, I finally understood. Sometimes silence is just the prologue to a total loss. I sat there for a long time, watching the steam from the coffee dissolve into the air. The faint bitter aroma suddenly caused a sharp physical pang in my chest. Outside, the noise of New York traffic was as loud as ever, but inside me, there was a deep, echoing void that nothing could ever fill. The break Megan had asked for, it lasted longer than I ever anticipated. A week bled into 2, and 2 weeks felt like an eternity. She claimed she needed space to figure things out, and I, like the fool I was, respected it. I kept sending the same text every morning, "Hope you have a good day." They just sat there in the chat thread, quiet and unread, like shards of glass reflecting my own stubborn stupidity. One Tuesday night, as I poured myself a second glass of whiskey, my phone vibrated. A bank notification popped up, a charge for $270 at an Italian place. The name made me frown instantly. Ilfin, the restaurant where Megan and I had celebrated our 2nd anniversary. Except, I wasn't there tonight. I opened the location app, an old habit. Back when she started working late, I'd turned on location sharing, telling myself it was out of worry. My heart slowed to a painful crawl. She was in Soho, right next to Il Fornaio. I didn't intend to do anything reckless, but my hands were shaking as I put the glass down. The feeling chaotic, sickening, a mix of pure anger and cold fear compressed into a tight storm in my chest. I grabbed my jacket and left the apartment, not even knowing what I was seeking. Maybe an answer, maybe just the truth. Soho was bright and loud at night, couples arm in arm breezing past me like ghosts. When I reached the restaurant entrance, warm yellow light spilled out onto the sidewalk. I stopped outside, looking through the glass, and my heart flatlined. Megan was sitting there, wearing the sapphire blue dress she wore the night I proposed. Across from her was a man I'd never seen before, brown hair, crisp white shirt, smiling gently as he poured her wine. Megan was laughing, too, a full, genuine laugh I hadn't seen in months, effortless, radiant, and not for me. I stepped back, physically unable to process the sight. Everything slowed down, the murmur of the crowd, the clink of glasses, the frantic, desperate beat of my own pulse. I didn't burst in, I didn't shout, I just stood there, staring at the woman I loved the most. Watching her pour her attention into someone else, I turned away, the night wind cutting through my skin like needles. Only one thought echoed in my mind, the space she wanted. Was the space to forget me. When I finally got back to the apartment, it was 11:30. The place was so silent I could hear the loud, obnoxious tick-tock of the wall clock. I walked to the liquor cabinet, almost poured another drink, then stopped myself. In the mirror, my face looked alien, drawn, rigid, my eyes red and strained. I sat at my laptop, intending to write, but my fingers wouldn't move. The next morning, a text came from Megan, just for words. "We need to talk." I waited all day. She arrived in the evening, her expression heavy and subdued, a small overnight bag clutched in her hand. No hug, no kiss, just an unbearable distance. "Did you follow me last night?" Her voice was low but sharp. I stayed silent. She sighed, a sound of exhausted resignation. "Eric, I'm tired. I didn't lie to you about who I was, but I'm not sure I want this life anymore." The sentence was thin as a thread, but it cut deeper than any accusation. I looked at her. "I do. I still choose you, even if you don't choose me back." Megan bowed her head, and I saw a tear fall onto her dark shirt. But she didn't say anything more. She turned, walked out of the apartment, and closed the door behind her. No promise, no proper goodbye. I collapsed onto the sofa, the spot where she had just been sitting, and stared at the empty space for a long time. The faint scent of her perfume lingered in the air, scent I suddenly couldn't stand anymore. In the days after Megan left, the apartment turned into a museum of stale memories. Everything was exactly where she'd left it, her coffee mug, the faint lipstick mark still staining the rim, her coat draped over the chair, the slippers by the sofa, but she was completely gone. No note, no call. Every morning, I brewed a full pot, poured 2 cups, and then dumped one down the drain. The sound of the running water, the clink of the porcelain, seemed to amplify the crushing emptiness in my chest. The void wasn't confined to the apartment. It bled into every part of my life. Driving to the office, every streetlight, every corner, every laughing couplet, all seemed separated from me by an invisible, suffocating barrier. In the studio, I tried to focus on blueprints, but my mind was perpetually replaying the unanswered texts, the long silences, her distant stare. I kept telling myself, if she needs space, give her space. But the passage of time only deepened the silence, making it more cruel, more absolute. Then came the statement, a transfer of $800 to a company called Blue Arc Interiors. The amount wasn't huge, but the name made me squint. Megan had mentioned them, a firm she occasionally collaborated with, strictly professional. Why the personal payment? I pulled up the company's website and scrolled through the portfolio, landing on a new personal project, private residence, Soho District, designed for Ms. Megan Lewis. My breath caught. A private apartment, in her name, a space she had meticulously prepared well in advance. My heart tightened into a painful knot. Her talk of a break wasn't about needing time to think. It was a calculated step in a pre-planned exit strategy. I drove to the address, heavy with dread. The building was new, all glass and polished chrome, almost offensively luxurious in the late afternoon light. I stood across the street, just wanting to see, to confirm the horror. And then I saw her. Megan walked out, arm in arm with Luke, the man I'd seen at Ilford. They were smiling, their eyes bright, their intimacy radiating. I froze. I didn't scream. I didn't rush them. I just watched, feeling every beat of my heart, every breath, slowly dissolving. Back in the apartment, I tried to calm the shaking in my hands. But sitting at my laptop, I stumbled across a hidden folder named Plans, containing design layouts, blueprints, and a final handwritten note. This space will be a fresh start. For me and Luke. My hands were trembling, my vision blurring. I sat there in the quiet room, staring at the familiar details of our life, each one now a sign of betrayal. Time passed without my notice, the steady tick-tock of the clock on the wall emphasizing the profound emptiness. The next few days became an agonizing hunt. I found small receipts, deleted messages, and strange calls. I began to track her movements, like a detective searching for clues in a nameless crime. Each discovery was a fresh, small incision, making the wound worse. I kept asking myself, did I ever really know the person I fell in love with? I drove through Soho, looping around her new building, staring at the warm lights shining from the glass windows. The image of Megan laughing with Luke was burned into my mind, impossible to shake. I knew I couldn't survive unless I got a final answer. One evening, my phone vibrated. A text from Megan, "We need to talk." I waited all day. She showed up at night, her eyes subdued, carrying a small bag. No embrace, no warmth, just that aching distance. "Did you follow me last night?" Her voice was low and testing. I remained silent. "Eric, I'm tired. I didn't lie to you about who I was, but I'm not sure I want this life anymore." I looked at her, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I still choose you, even if you don't choose me back." She lowered her head, and a tear tracked down her cheek. Then she turned and walked out. The door clicked shut, leaving me with the cold, vast emptiness. I knew then this wasn't just a conflict, it was the devastating point of no return, where I realized everything I had ever believed in was now reduced to a haunting silence and the cruel, indelible proof of betrayal. That night, I sat paralyzed in our apartment, staring at the photo we took in Central Park. Megan was laughing, my arm wrapped securely around her, the late afternoon sun catching the highlights in her hair. Now, the picture was a painful, searing reminder. Those moments of happiness were only memories, a finished chapter I no longer belonged to. I tried to take a deep breath, but every inhale felt weighted down by betrayal and loss. The next morning I called her. My voice was tight, but I managed to sound stable. "Megan, tonight, we talk straight up, no games." Her response was flat, almost mechanical. "Okay, Luke will be here too." My heart hammered a loud, frantic drumbeat against my ribs. When I walked into the Soho apartment, Luke's eyes met mine. He was calm, but there was a guarded defiance there. Megan stood next to him, holding a coffee mug, her gaze avoiding mine. I fought for composure, but I felt like my entire body was a tightly coiled spring, ready to snap. I started, my voice low and shaking. "Megan, why did it have to come down to this?" She stayed silent, her voice brittle when she finally spoke. "Eric, I didn't mean for any of this to happen the way it did. You know, I've been thinking about this for a long time, but..." I exploded, my voice cracking. "But what? You moved out, stole money from our joint account, bought an apartment for another man, and call it a fresh start. Do you have any idea what this has felt like?" Megan dropped her head, a single tear trailing down her cheek. "I just wanted to be free, and Luke was there. You understand, don't you?" "No, I don't understand. I love you," I roared, the rage, the desperation, the absolute brokenness focused in every syllable. Luke stepped forward, attempting to intervene, but I threw my hand out, cutting him off. "Stay out of this. I don't need an explanation from you." He backed away, his expression tense, maintaining a cautious distance. Megan looked at me, her tears finally starting to flow freely. For the first time, she looked genuinely vulnerable, the cool composure gone. "Eric, I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you, but my heart..." I gave a short, bitter laugh. Your heart hasn't had room for me for months." Every word was a deep, self-inflicted wound. Every memory, every promise, every shared moment now felt like evidence of a calculated deceit. I turned toward the door, unable to stand there another second. Megan called my name, but I didn't look back. The sound of my shoes on the hardwood floor was steady, a rhythm matching the breaking pieces of my own heart. Outside, the cold wind whipped across my face. I stood amidst the bustling street, everything around me alive, the cars, the laughter of strangers, the glittering city lights. But inside, there was only a colossal void. The confrontation hadn't brought relief. It had only clarified the devastation. Not everyone stays on the path of love with you. I sank onto the steps of the building, staring up at the darkening sky. For the first time in weeks, I cried. Not just because I lost her, but because I had given everything, trusted everything, and received only silence, lies, and a brutal lesson in faith. I closed my eyes, took a long, ragged breath, forcing myself to feel the fact that I was still standing, In that instant, I knew that despite the agony, I had to find a way to get up, to move forward, to look squarely at reality, no matter how ugly it was. The anger was still there. The pain was still there, but something else surfaced too: clarity. I was no longer the blindly devoted man. I realized that to survive, to keep from being crushed, I needed to make a choice: how much more of myself I would give, and what I needed to keep. And in the quiet of the New York night, framed by yellow streetlights and the distant hum of traffic, I began to see, life doesn't stop for heartbreak. It keeps moving, and I had to move with it. But this time, with my eyes wide open, and my heart ready to learn how to defend itself. In the days that followed the confrontation, I spent a lot of time in the apartment, looking at everything with new eyes. The wooden table, the coffee mugs, the framed photos, each small detail was still there. But they no longer pierced me with the same agony. They were artifacts of the past, not weights pulling down the present. I took a deep breath, realizing that to move forward, I had to learn the art of letting go, not forgetting, but making space for quiet sanity and new opportunity. The first thing I did was organize the finances, the paperwork, the clutter, the memories. I audited the joint accounts, itemized everything, and reclaimed what was mine. Slowly, the apartment became tidy, every object placed intentionally, a stark contrast to the emotional mess it had been. I even spent an afternoon sorting through the last remnants of Megan, the photos, the old cards, the small trinkets she'd left behind. With every item I put away, I felt a slight, undeniable easing of the burden, as if I was methodically pulling the splinters out of myself. During the long nights, the memories of Megan still surfaced, still caused a brief, sharp pang. But instead of drowning in bitterness, I began to ask a different question: what truly makes me happy? I realized that love wasn't just about giving and receiving. It was about protecting myself, maintaining my integrity, and learning not to lose my own identity in the chaos of a relationship. I started prioritizing myself. I walked the familiar streets of Philadelphia again, breathing in the city air, meeting friends and colleagues, allowing myself to talk through the raw emotions. Each step was a quiet reminder that life persisted, and I still had agency, still had the ability to stand up after the fall. I began journaling, capturing every thought, every feeling, every disappointment, and every hard-won lesson. Writing it down helped me gain clarity, showing me I was stronger than I felt. One morning, the sun streamed through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I stood near the glass, watching the pale golden light wash over the hardwood floor, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something new: hope. There was no more waiting for Megan, no more consuming sense of betrayal. Just Eric, a man who had learned to stand on his own, who had learned to love himself before needing anyone else to do it. I started planning the future, one small step at a time. I signed up for an advanced design course, returned to unfinished personal projects, and started networking for new opportunities. Every small accomplishment brought a tiny, self-contained happiness. I understood that happiness wasn't dependent on another person's presence. It was the ability to be resilient, confident, and true to myself. One afternoon, walking along the riverfront, I watched the glorious sunset reflecting off the water. I sighed, but this time it was a sigh of release. My heart still ached, but it wasn't shattered. I understood that every wound, every betrayal, eventually becomes a valuable piece of instruction. I promised myself, I won't let anyone destroy my belief in myself. I will move forward, with my eyes wide open and my heart stronger. When I finally locked the door to the apartment, I didn't look back. The morning light filtered through the glass, reflecting the image of the new Eric, the man who had endured, who had been disappointed, but who was still standing. I walked out, not with a broken heart, but with a heart ready to live, ready to love with more awareness and courage than ever before. And in that final quiet moment, I recognized the most important truth of all: love isn't defined by loss or betrayal, but by the capacity for self-growth, the courage to let go and welcome the new possibilities only meant for you. In the days that followed the final confrontation, I stayed in the apartment, but I looked at everything with different eyes. The wooden desk, the coffee cups, the framed photos, each small detail was still there, but they no longer felt like a fist clenching my chest. They were mere witnesses to a past, no longer a burden on the present. I took a deep breath, realizing that to keep living, I had to master the art of letting go, not erasing the memory, but clearing space for genuine peace and new possibilities. The first act was methodical. I reorganized the finances, the legal documents, the physical clutter, the emotional debris. I went through bank statements, recovered what I could, and untangled the joint accounts. Slowly, the apartment became orderly, every item placed with intention. I even set aside time to handle the memorabilia related to Megan, the pictures, the old greeting cards, the small items she'd left behind. With every item I packed away, I felt a slight, incremental release, as if I were carefully extracting the embedded pain from my own core. During those long, quiet nights, the memory of Megan still surfaced, still caused a brief catch in my throat. But instead of sinking into bitterness, I started asking a new question. What truly brings Eric happiness? I realized that love wasn't just about the exchange of affection. It was about self-preservation, protecting my trust, and learning how not to lose myself in complicated relationships. I began investing time in myself. I walked the familiar streets of Philadelphia again, inhaling the cool city air, meeting old friends and colleagues, allowing those conversations to slowly soothe the ache. Every step was a tangible reminder that life continued, and I still had agency, still had the ability to recover from the fall. I started journaling, too, recording every fleeting thought, every hard-won emotion, every disappointment, and every lesson extracted from the wound. Writing made me understand myself better, showing me a quiet resilience I hadn't known I possessed. One morning, the sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating every corner of the apartment. I stood by the glass, watching the pale gold light warm the floor. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something new. Hope. There was no more anticipation for Megan, no residual feeling of betrayal controlling me. Only Eric, a man who had learned to stand firm, who had learned the value of self-love before extending it to another. I began planning the future, in small, manageable steps. I signed up for an advanced design certification course, returned to long-abandoned personal projects, and started looking for new professional challenges. With every task I completed, I felt a tiny, yet whole, sense of happiness. I understood that true contentment wasn't the sudden arrival of someone else in my life, but the quiet strength to be self-confident and authentic. One afternoon, walking along the river, I watched a brilliant sunset reflect on the water. I sighed, but this time, it was a sigh of relief. My heart still held a scar, but it was no longer actively bleeding. I grasped that every injury, every betrayal, eventually evolves into a priceless lesson. I promised myself, I will not let anyone destroy my fundamental belief in myself. I will move forward, with my eyes wide open and my heart stronger. As I closed the apartment door for the last time, not locking up, but moving out, I didn't look back. The morning light filtered through the glass, reflecting the image of the new Eric, the man who had endured, who had suffered disillusionment, but who was still resolutely standing. I walked outside, not with a broken heart, but with a heart ready to live, ready to love with a fierce clarity and courage I'd never known. And in that moment, I realized the most profound truth. Love, in its purest form, isn't about loss or betrayal. It's about growth, the sheer power to let go and embrace the new opportunities meant specifically for you.